And joining me now to discuss this recent provocation by North Korea is a global affairs analyst, Joshua Onyenwere. Good to have you join us, Joshua Onyenwere. When you look at this, I mean, for over a year, we've not seen this kind of provocation coming from North Korea. The last type of this provocation was in April last year. What do you think is the motivation for this?
Well, thank you for having me. Before I begin, let me point out that all of these talks around North Korea's denuclearization has, started more than 2 decades ago, around 1990. And what this indicates is that lots of talks, peace talks, sanctions, and diplomacy don't seem to have worked yet. So this pretty much highlights that the situation has to be, looked at much more critically, particularly looking at the strengths, the weakness, who are those who are gaining from this situation and who are those who are losing from this situation. But in all, what we have seen is that this is not the first time that Japan is flying a missile. North Korea is flying a missile over Japan. This is the third time, all right? But what North Korea is aiming to achieve in this case, in this situation, which is a 180-degree, shift in narrative from the previous missiles that flew over Japan. What North Korea is saying in this situation is that the joint military exercise that the United States and South Korea consistently conduct every year in August needs to stop. And this is the message that North Korea is passing across the United States in the best possible form that it can.
Now, this is also coming on the heels of a meeting between South Korea, Japan, and U.S. In an effort to draft a new foreign policy strategy, for North Korea. That hasn't been drafted. So how do you think that Japan and South Korea will react or respond to this?
Well, they have all responded. Japan condemned it, and not just Japan. There are so many actors in this conflict, in this threat. You have the United States as well. You have China as well as Russia. But what we have seen recently is that all across board, all countries have condemned these missile launches. But surprisingly, in addition to condemning the threat, China has blamed the United States and South Korea as triggering or pressuring North Korea to taking this path of launching missile as a way to send a message to the meeting that the policy review that is going to be done in coming weeks by the United States, Japan, and South Korea. Unfortunately, what we have witnessed is that Japan seemed to be, the weakest in this whole elephant fighting, because Japan hasn't been part of the joint military exercise that is being conducted every year by the United States and South Korea. But Japan, on the other hand, hasn't stepped up its anti-ballistic missile system, so as against South Korea. So unfortunately, North Korea is passing a message across the United States using Japan as the scapegoat in this case.
So I like that you brought up China, because China, of course, has responded like you mentioned. But China is also North Korea's largest trading partner and the country with the strongest influence on North Korea, and the only country at this point that can put pressure on North Korea. But when you look at the sanctions that have been imposed on China and the meeting between the two U.S. And China that ended with a lot of tension, do you see China willing to put pressure on North Korea?
Actually, the question was asked to China if they would step up their sanctions, because there is already an existing sanctions by China against North Korea. And the question was asked, and the response was hypothetically, if that is the case, that China wouldn't do that. Let's not forget that North Korea first is the largest trading partner of China, and also there are money that are stacked in the Chinese bank that belongs to North Korea. So that doesn't seem to be the case of what is going to happen. And we have heard the Chinese, Beijing, saying that no, they are not going to step up any sanction. Yes, they promote or they encourage peace talks as a way out, and also a direct blame to United States and South Korea as being the main, actors that are pushing for this conflict.
But what is the possibility of resuming those talks, those peace talks you just talked about, for denuclearization? What is the possibility of resuming those talks with North Korea?
Well, like I said earlier, this is not the first time. All of these talks started, all the way back, more than 2 decades ago. For North Korea, they already have said that United States should sit tight for a long ride, for the policy that they're going to be deliberating, that and also that it's not going to have any effect on them. But what is more important in this case is that, the peace talk is very essential, because if Japan has to, go all the way to, equipping itself with anti-ballistic missiles, the whole region, will become much more, volatile, and then you will have, arms race. So the best way out, which China has proposed, which also Russia, ironically has proposed, is peace talks must be brought back to the table. Whether or not North Korea will become a part of it is up for, for contention.
It looks like for every conversation I have these days on foreign policy, I always ask, where does this leave President Biden? But again, I have to ask, because he's a key player here. There were talks between former President Trump and the North Korean leader, and it does look like that is dead. So he is a strong ally. U.S. is a strong ally of South Korea and Japan. So really, where does this leave President Biden in terms of his foreign policy strategy towards North Korea?
Okay, so first of all, North Korea for more than 4 years have had long ballistic missiles that can actually be launched on the United States. For more than 4 years, they've had that. So this is not the first time also that North Korea is testing its missile. In fact, last month they tested the missile. I think even last weekend, Saturday, 2 missiles were tested, short missiles were tested. But why this is much more, pronounced and many people are talking about it, is because it flew over Japan. So this is, a direct threat. For Biden administration, I really would take a guess that the talks will continue and the policy review will continue, but sanctions on North Korea. I mean, what are the sanctions? What other avenue do they have than the sanction, which has proven itself time and time again, failing time and time again. So the only option at this point is for peace talks, and also, look at the demands that North Korea is making, that stop the joint military exercise that you consistently conduct in South Korea every year.
You are absolutely right on the part of the sanction. A lot of people also agree with you, and they say that, look, North Korea is not going to give up its nuclear weapons without a huge concession, with the U.S. might not be willing to give. Global Affairs analyst Joshua Onyewere, thanks for talking to us.
Thank you for having me.